Okay, here we are. It is the 30th of November, 2018, and we have as a guest here Dr. Tim Atkinson, who is from Virginia, and he's got quite a good story, and I thought we would get to know him today. So, Dr. Tim, how did you get started, and how did you get where you are now?
My goodness, that's a big one. I'll pick up. I was happily in the music business. Had some music stores. We were primarily in the piano and organ business, and I thought that was what I was going to be the rest of my life. But unfortunately, a tragic accident interrupted life as we knew it, and we never have gotten back to that since then. I had a stepdaughter, actually two twins, in a car wreck. They were 18 on their way back to college. They had a wreck, rolled the car, and we were called in the middle of the night with the phone call that parents don't want to hear, that the kids got in a wreck. They've life-flighted them to Joplin, Missouri, and one of them was going to be dead by the time we could get there. They had no idea which one it was because they're identical twins. And something you can probably relate to a little bit more than most people. So we went, got up, got dressed, got to the hospital as soon as we could. There were already people there. And we spent the next few weeks touch and go. They were expecting her to leave the planet just any moment, and we were expecting God to do a miracle. That didn't really mix too well. And so after about a week, they sicked a psychiatrist on me, took me in a little room, and he diagnosed me with being in denial,
Yeah, religious denial, huh?
Yeah.
It's religious denial syndrome, right?
Somewhere in Egypt, I think.
Yeah, it's a psychological disorder that hits a lot of people.
Yeah. So I thanked him for that brilliant deduction, which made him mad. And I just was expecting God to do something and wasn't sure what, but she wasn't going to die on my watch. And she didn't. Didn't take too long. It was touch and go. She was in a coma, and she developed, all kinds of other stuff that they had to deal with. And they ended up, insurance dropped her. They thought we should pull the plug, and we wouldn't do that. And so, make a long story short, she recovered from the car wreck, but the doctors almost killed her. And, literally, they gave her a drug called Tegradol, which is a seizure medication. Thought they were giving her Tylenol. And, she had a stroke. So her whole right side was not working then, along with a bunch of other stuff.
Was a stroke, is that caused by the drug?
The drug, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. On top of all that, huh?
So, we discovered during this time natural medicine. And so we had lots of good results with that, but it never brought her right side back. And finally, 5 years after the wreck, had a knock on the door, and it was a chiropractor. And he said he had been at a prayer meeting the night before, and somebody was praying for us. And he said God spoke to him, and he said, go help those people. So he knocked on our door, and he told me the story. And, when you're desperate and you're praying, and then somebody knocks on your door, you open and let them in.
Yeah.
And
the timing alone tells you something.
Yeah, we were worn out. We worn out the church, the friends. Nobody even wanted to come see us anymore because we were having such a pity party and, all of that. And he had a little box with him. It turned out to be a frequency box. And he told me that with the proper frequencies, he could start turning on things and making them work in her body again.
Now, you understood frequencies already.
I had one of those machines,
Uh-huh.
but I used it to tune pianos with, not to
Tune pianos.
not to heal bodies. You know,
Yeah.
it was bizarre. I called it back then woo-woo technology. I didn't know what else to call it. You know, it was weird. But at this point, it wasn't going to hurt anything. And if it helped, you know, that was great. So I let him do his thing. And to make it short again, he brought her whole right side back. 5 years, which is 4 years later than that ever is supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. After 5 years, it's basically it's a permanent case, at least in conventional medicine it would be, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we discovered something that was pretty exciting to me. And even though it was woo-woo, I put it in the God column. A lot of other people didn't. But that got my interest. And then I had cancer and used natural stuff to do that. And
How
it went away.
long afterwards was the relation in time from the?
Well, during that time,
was
during
like
that 5 years.
still during that time,
is just, the problem was she was in such bad shape, I had to spend all my time with her. I couldn't even hardly go to work without getting a phone call saying, come back home, we got to take her into the hospital or somewhere. So it was a bad time.
Yeah.
But we both experienced some healing, and that really changed my whole perspective on life. I ended up going back to school, becoming a naturopathic doctor, but I couldn't get away from that frequency stuff. And so I scheduled a trip to Germany and went and learned. And I tried buying things from them, and they were real good at hitting my card and real bad about getting me stuff. So I ended up saying, Lord, how do I do this so I don't have to depend on them? And kind of had a eureka moment and learned how to make things. And I never really thought about doing that. It just, based on the need, it got invented.
So it was need driven, huh?
Yeah, which they always are if you read the stories.
Now your basic attitude toward woo-woo stuff, I know that there's the way years ago, the way I would have thought and the way I was raised in church, a lot in the church, they would have thought of such things as frequency healing as being demonic. But you put it in the God column. What was it in your background that other than the need, that made you even put it in the God column? I mean, I understand you went to school prior to that time. Where did you go to school? What was your background?
I went to Oral Roberts University.
Okay, you graduated from.
I didn't graduate from there, but that's where I went.
That's where you went. Okay.
Then I did other university studies with the naturopathy and that stuff.
I see. Okay. Now, what time frame is this? What year was this when you were making all these changes and everything, and starting to make your own stuff?
Well, it was back in the 90s when the wreck was, 92.
Okay.
Started making my stuff after year 2002.
Okay. So it was about 10 years. You had 5 years before your daughter was essentially restored on her right side.
Yeah.
And then another 5 years or so before you started making this stuff on your own. Okay. It helps me to understand it, because I think always in terms of timing and what is God doing in those days and things like that. So go ahead.
So it was really funny because my professor that I studied with found these German products that were energy tools that would structure water. And he wanted a partner to go in with him to get the distributorship. So I was just very honored that he would think of me. And what he didn't know is I already had my ticket to Germany and was on my way over there to start studying this stuff. So I knew I would find it if it was really there. And I did, plus a whole lot of other stuff. And they accidentally taught me how to do it. They didn't. They really planned to teach us, and then we'd buy things from them. And God had other ideas. And so we came up with our own products. And for the first year, we just gave stuff away just to see if it would work or not. And then we decided to form a private membership club made up of people that would be willing to buy products and do research and see if they would work or not. So that's been about 16 years ago. And we've been all over the world.
Let's get back to the structured water idea. What actually is structured water? I mean, to most people out there, in the viewer audience, water is water. And what do you mean structured water? Do you? I mean, if you put it into a glass, it's structured in the shape of a glass. But what are you talking about?
Well, that's pretty good. That's better than the science.
Yeah.
Water, as we know, most of the water that we have is really in bad shape. And we've got to somehow get it back, and it requires more than just filtration. The way it is structured normally...
Are you talking about molecular structure?
The molecular structure of the water. And, today we have, lots of poisons in it and algae and all that kind of stuff. And it's not fit to drink. So what we do is we filter it and then think that's better. But the Germans taught us that it still has the frequencies of the poisons in there. So you can take the chlorine out, but it still has the frequency of the chlorine, which is what kills people.
So is water kind of like a computer chip that stores data or something? How does that work?
It's the best computer chip. In fact, one night I was trying to explain this and get through it, and it's difficult back in the beginning because I still didn't know really half the answers even of what I was doing. And a guy raised his hand. He had worked for Microsoft, IBM in the beginning when they were making computer chips. And he said, we wanted to do water because we knew water had the best memory. And so water has memory. That's interesting. And he said, but we couldn't do it. We didn't know how to put the water in the computer chip to make it work. He said, so we did the next best thing. We figured out how to do it with sand, silica. And, of course, Silicon Valley now, and so on and so forth. So sand has memory. And I had been in business with a gentleman that's a quantum physicist type. We always thought was crazy. And he would point to the wall, and he'd say, this wall has memory. And I thought, yeah, right.
The rocks will speak, cry out.
That's right. So all I could think of was, gee, it'd be fun to go back to the pyramids and let them talk to us for a while,
That's right. We've all heard the saying, if these walls could talk.
And he claimed there was technology that could do that. And, of course, we thought he was nuts.
But if you have the instrument to play the recording, you could find out what was happening, right?
Yeah, and to do that, you have to go to the radio at 12 midnight and listen to Coast. They have guys like that on there.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, years ago I learned also, I related this immediately to prayer because every time, you eat a meal and you bless the food, it isn't just thanking God for the food. We're actually blessing it as well and imparting a frequency in that, which is through the wireless transmission from your frequency from here into the food, which then creates something in that is beneficial to you.
We can actually, I shouldn't tell people this, I'd quit selling product, but the truth is we have the ability to structure our own food, our own water, and
it's just about knowing how to do it and
knowing how to do it. We've
what
proved
to do.
that we can do that by blessing the food. Dr. Emoto, we worked with Dr. Emoto back in the beginning, who, of course,
the Japanese scientist.
That was...
I heard him speak, by the way, here in Minneapolis, probably, I think almost 15 years ago now. He couldn't speak English very well, but he had a very good slide presentation and a translator, and he actually had a slow-mo video from his molecular microscope where you freeze dry water and and do this electron microscope, and you could actually he would play different kinds of music, rock music, Beethoven, stuff like that, and according to the nature and the spirit really of the music, it would shape these water crystals either in distorted shapes, as in rock music, or even Christian rock, I might add. Or if you had good harmonious music, it would shape the crystals. It would literally build the crystals. You could see it building on screen in the shape of beautiful shapes like snowflakes. And the longer the music went on, the more complex it got, and it was really quite impressive. And you can look him up, by the way, on online. If anyone wants to look it up, just look up Dr. Emoto. That's EMOTO, structured water, and I'm sure you'll be able to find some of his stuff. He's got some books out with pictures and all that. It's very interesting because, not even being a Christian, he could pick up on a whole lot of truth just by the physics of the whole thing.
And I knew Carl Baugh, who's a Christian archaeologist.
Yeah, creationist.
Creationist Museum. And he's the one that brought him over here, and he put him on the different Christian talk shows.
Really? Oh, that's
and he caught a lot of flack for that.
Oh, yeah, because obviously that would be demonic, right, to a lot of people. You know, it's amazing when we take God's creation and we somehow agree that it belongs to the devil, when the fact is, no, the devil uses God's creation, but so can we. In fact, we're the ones that are supposed to be using it, not them, because they use it for evil purposes. We are supposed to be using it to build up good life, health, and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and people would accuse us sometimes of dealing with the devil, And I said, well, if he heals and God doesn't, then maybe we're working for the wrong guys,
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me. But I was brought up in a Christian home with loving parents who we were taught that whoever teaches you, you check them with the Word. And if they don't agree with the Word, don't agree with them. And their pastor even said the same thing. Don't agree with me just because I said it. And it's always stuck with us to be kind of free thinkers and independent thinkers, and to be willing to if you're wrong, say you're wrong, get right, and get with the program, We've all had to do that from time to time.
Yeah.
Because we find out that some of the traditions of the church are not correct.
Yeah. So what happened after that then? How did that develop once you started building your own frequency devices?
Well, we found out that the frequencies would change the ion spin of whatever. Everything has it. And it would work on just about everything. So we had, in the early days, fuel patches, for instance, that would give us more gas mileage. And we thought we were going to win the Nobel Prize on that, and what we found out was the car industry wasn't interested in something that got better gas mileage.
Well, the oil industry certainly wasn't.
They sure were not.
Yeah.
So we kept getting the left foot of fellowship, as we call it, thinking we were going to, win over the world, and finding out the world doesn't want what we had. And, we cleaned up a lake with this. And the Corps of Engineers agreed that they would give us a contract if we did it. And when we actually did it, we found out that they gave us the contract because they thought all the technologies, this was the woo-woo one, and there's no way it would ever happen. So when it happened, they didn't know exactly what to do, and so they just decided to stop talking to us.
Yeah, that's always a solution, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you can't refute it, then just ignore it.
Yeah.
And make sure nobody understands it.
So that's what we did, and then we finally decided we got invited to Mexico. And it was like Mexico rolled out the red carpet for us, where these other groups that we had tried to work with didn't want to have anything to do with us. Mm-hmm. And so we went where there's tremendous need and gratefulness at the same time. And so we got connected with a university, the University of Chapingo, which is the top agricultural university. But they also have herbology department and things like that. And we started with some natural classes like you have taken in the past. And then we finally got the agriculture guys on board with us. And we got hooked up for them to agree to do different studies. And they ended up taking our technologies and certifying them in Mexico and all the Spanish-speaking countries.
So, from what you've told me before, you got some credibility through healing people through frequency, first of all, and then it moved on from there into the realm of agriculture, where they are even now, to this day now, are developing products, agricultural products, that are far more nutritious and lush and productive than their best techniques were before. Is that about correct?
It used to always bother me from the time I was a kid that we would pray for people in church that had terrific needs and not get healed. And I wondered, what is the problem here? We're following
That's one of the biggies from virtually every circle that we know of, where people believe in divine healing, but it doesn't seem to happen or doesn't seem to work.
And that just dogged me my whole life.
Uh-huh.
And what if I told you there's a way for people who are in pain? You can identify that they're in pain, have them give you what level of pain they are right now from 1 to 10, and you could guarantee them that without manipulation, without drugs, that through a very simple process that you can learn in an afternoon, you can improve those numbers by 50% or more. Would that be something you'd like to do?
I think most people would jump at the chance, especially if they're the subjects that are in pain.
That's true. And
we do a lot of stuff to reduce the pain levels.
Yeah. And, we're willing to do so many different things. This is the easiest one of them. So a lot of people have said yes to wanting to do that. And we teach a class, and you've gone to it, and you've seen it and used it. And we've just had some terrific results. It's called quantum alignment.
Can you give us some specific examples, or maybe a couple of them? And I'm thinking specifically maybe of your first encounter down at the university, how you got some credibility down there.
Well, we set up a class at the university, and they're just like everybody else. They were skeptical, and they had the first time they brought in 30 people that had pain to test me, and I didn't know some of these people were famous in Mexico, and I didn't even know, I didn't speak the language and didn't know who the people were. And I would just say, what's your pain level? And they'd say cinco or cuatro or ocho or whatever, And then I would do the alignment on there where we'd check their hips, and one hip would be higher than the other usually, and then the same thing with their occipitalis and their collarbone or clavicula, and then we would have an energy tool on each hand, and we would just do each area, and then we would have them say claviculus aliency for the clavicle, where we're saying clavicle line up, and then same thing with the jaws or the mandibulus aliency, and we just watch everything happen. And
so you literally command your body to do something, and it obeys.
Yeah, isn't that something? Where you're doing what the Word says to do, and it actually happens. And that was the answer that I'd been looking for those many years. And it came out as a result of Christy having level 9 pain when she was on the Imitrex and other drugs, and just trying to help her so she could have somewhat better life and not be in such bad pain all the time. I had no idea it was going to help other people. Wasn't even trying to do that. It's just one of those things that developed. And so when out of the 30 people got good results. So they decided to let me do the class. And in the class, there was a doctor that was the head of the department who wore a device in his shoe, a lift in his shoe of 1.5 inches, because he was considerably 1.5 inches shorter with one leg.
My dad wore those on both feet because he was only 5'4".
Oh.
He didn't like my mother being taller
6'2".
than him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had it just in one shoe.
Now they
obviously.
just have a higher hairdo,
Yeah.
If I would have known I could have been 6'5" back in 1969, I could have been a pro basketball player,
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, they gave us, actually we had a lot of people that took the class, but they had us in a room that was really undersized for who we had. And after that night where he had that healing, where he had to take the shoes off and get rid of that thing because he couldn't walk that way.
He couldn't no longer walk with the...
And so he went to the administration. He says, okay, give us what we wanted in the first place. And the next day we met in the auditorium where everybody was nice and comfortable and so on and so forth. And then we had the auditorium ever since. But it took a head of a department to get the job done and say we were legit. Because there was I call them the other side, didn't want us.
The opposition.
And we have to.
The alternative methods.
Yeah. So then we started teaching the classes there, and the agriculture department decided if this energy can do something for human beings, maybe it can do something for the animals and the crops too. So there's a long story about that I won't go into now, but they came trying to disprove it and ended up healing the worst man in the class. He was the karate coach.
Oh, yeah.
He was a 9.5 out of 10. We had broken bones, all kinds of stuff.
I suppose he had broken a lot of bones in his career.
And the agriculture guys got him as the partner to
the guinea pig.
And everybody had to balance everyone out. And they watched his pain level go down to 0.5. And I wasn't anywhere near helping them. They thought I was some kind of magician or shaman or something, and it would only work for me. But it was working for them, and they didn't even believe in it.
Interesting.
And that's really confused the heck out of me, because everyone, in Christian world wants to know, well, did you believe God was going to do this? And Actually, there's people that didn't know anything about God that were doing it, and they were healed anyway.
Well, that would tell me, you go back to Genesis 1, where God gave man dominion. He didn't really specify which people would be given dominion. We have a residual dominion regardless of our belief. Now, obviously, if we believe, we're going to be able to use that dominion properly. But there's a whole lot of people who use dominion improperly. A lot of unbelievers. There's a lot of dictators and totalitarian rulers and people that are all pretty bad guys. And yet, the fact that we are human beings gives us a certain authority that's residual from way back in Genesis 1. That would be my explanation on something like that. Huh? What do you think?
I agree. And it's just one of those things. It's kind of like the different laws that God has, like law of gravity. It works whether you believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe it, you can go ahead and jump off that building and find out.
Mm-hmm.
It.
See if you can defy gravity.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been people who've tried.
And then the law of lift overcomes the law of gravity, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So when some of this stuff is developed, there are laws that are in place that man doesn't know yet. And so what else will we discover that right now just seems absolutely crazy to us, but in a few years could be the norm?